All right, yesterday marked the 25th anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing, where 168 people lost their lives. And we're going to look at that anniversary, as well as take a look at a Senate task force designed to combat anti-Semitism, which is on the rise here in the United States and around the world, and its connection to domestic terrorism. Also get an update on the Paycheck Protection Program that is out of money. Joining me now to talk about all of this and more is Oklahoma Senator James Lankford. Senator, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Always a privilege to be with you, Tony.
Senator, I know you were a part of the event yesterday. It was not held live as it normally is. In fact, Kerry Watkins, who runs the memorial, who I graduated from high school with, lamented the fact that it had to be done kind of in a virtual setting, but you made remarks in that, and it was a very touching event. This is, and the governor, or the mayor rather, of Oklahoma City, I thought made a very significant point that at this 25-year mark, we go from being an event that we were a part of to one that becomes a part of history, and it's important that we continue to remind people what's behind it.
Yeah, it is, and one of the things that I try to be able to push as well is the history needs to be retold, because those who have lived it and remember it well need to be able to pass it on to a generation. Half of the people in the state of Oklahoma either were not in Oklahoma or were not alive at the time of 1995, just 25 years ago, and they do not know the story of a person who was angry at the government that got a Ryder truck, loaded it full of fertilizer and diesel fuel, pulled it up in front of a federal building, parked it directly in front of the child care center at the front door at the ground level, and drove away and allowed that Ryder truck to blow up and kill 168 people. It is the horrible act that is unexplainable still to this day. He didn't know anyone in the building. He was just mad at the government and just angry in general, and decided to kill children and people that work for the federal government that day. It could have been in any federal building in the entire country. It happened to be the one in Oklahoma City. And our response to it as a community was dramatic. And the term Oklahoma Standard that you still hear people talk about still today was set that day and the weeks following, and how we served each other. But it is a stark reminder when we allow our hatred and anger to be able to grow to a level that you just lash out irrationally. This can really become an issue for a generation.
Well, it can, and I think it's, you talk about it being Oklahoma that was targeted. Having grown up in Oklahoma myself, I understand that these are people who are very friendly. It is one of the reddest, if not the reddest state in the nation. And so they did respond in a way. This was, pre 9/11. And they did kind of set the standard for how Americans respond, but shocked by the fact that they were the target of this act of domestic terrorism. And that shock really continues even to this day in some ways.
It does, yeah. 25 years later, we still pause. I really do believe in Oklahoma there will never be an April 19th that we don't pause in some way as a state. And then many people across the country just pause to be able to remember and think about that day when 168 lives were senselessly lost. But it's also a day that we continue to be able to serve. We remember, we honor the families, we honor law enforcement and EMS and firefighters and so many folks that came running. Just total strangers ran to the scene to be able to help and stayed. And what is a single event that people look at April 19th, those of us in Oklahoma remember well. It was months and months and months of going through the debris and identifying bodies and notifying families and walking through the journey. Seemed to be an endless process that now we gather people to remember. And the Memorial Museum is all about dealing with domestic terrorism, dealing with international terrorism, dealing with communication and what happens when we have rising hatred, and how do we engage, whether it's anti-Semitism or racism or hatred against government, but how do we engage in such a way that we make sure this never happens again?
A great question. And I go back to, I made reference to the Oklahoma City Mayor David Holt and his comments leading up to the 25th anniversary when he said it marked a transition of the event from one of personal experience to one of historical significance. And I think that's an important point. As you talked about, half the population was not there 25 years ago. We've got to educate, inform. This is why history is so important. And you made reference to anti-Semitism. You co-chair that task force in the Senate. This is an issue that left unaddressed, we could see something repeat itself that we saw back in Germany in the early 1940s and 30s. And it's not just here in the United States, but it's global. But we need to be a leader in addressing it.
Yeah, we do, and this particular week is a week of remembering the Holocaust worldwide, and so it's a significant time period to be even talk about this as well. Senator Jackie Rosen and I, we co-chair that Anti-Semitism Task Force, and the focus for us is it's not about a certain faith, it's not about a certain race, it's not about a certain background, but we understand what has often happened to Jews first has then moved to other parts of society, where parts of society begin to prey on, pick on, push on for Jews, and then they begin to then separate out to other individuals in society, as happened in Germany in the 1930s and 40s, and then accelerated through the whole region. So standing up for what's right and standing up for human dignity, and the ability to be able to disagree and to say our families don't have to live the same or be the same, but we should be able to honor each other and to be able to have significant differences and talk about our differences without having to be able to isolate and dehumanize anyone. And anti-Semitism at its core dehumanizes people, and we see it rising in odd ways. This whole anti-Zionism movement to say that Israel shouldn't really be a Jewish nation, they should not be a nation founded around Judaism, is really a creeping type of anti-Semitism that's creeping in to be able to say those people with that faith and that place. And so we're trying to be able to speak out in as many ways as we can.
You're listening to Washington Watch. I'm your host, Tony Perkins. So glad that you are with us on this Monday. My guest in this first segment, Oklahoma Senator James Lankford, talking about the 25th anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing, but transitioning to anti-Semitism. And Senator, I just want to put a fine point on this because recently the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, which I presently chair, we hosted a hearing on this very issue, because some would say, oh, this is just a political issue, people just trying to make something out of it. No, there is quantifiable evidence to show that this is a growing problem once again globally, but it's here in the United States as well. In fact, we had the UN Rapporteur on anti-Semitism pointing out that the reason we need to be concerned with this, as you alluded to earlier, it's the canary in the coal mine. If we allow this to occur with a particular faith, in particular, history has shown us when Jews are attacked, it's not long after that we see other faiths attacked as well.
Right. And each individual should be a person that's protected and honored in their faith to be able to live out their faith. This is a basic American principle that we believe in, this freedom of religion. It's not only the freedom to be able to have a faith, it's to be able to live your faith or change your faith or to have no faith at all as an American. And so when we stand up for all faiths to be able to have that basic dignity in the United States, and we stand up for that right for people worldwide, we're standing up for what we believe is a basic human right that God has given us the ability to be able to choose. And so we want to be able to help protect that. So no government can force people to say you have to be a certain faith or you can't be a certain faith or you can't change your faith. We believe under God that we have the ability to be able to have that choice, and we should wisely make that choice.
Senator, before we run out of time, I want to transition to yet another topic. It's one that you were very much involved in as the Senate hammered out initially the details of the CARES Act, which was the third phase of the response to the coronavirus, which included the Paycheck Protection Program. That's essentially trying to keep people employed and off of the unemployment rolls. You worked very hard to make sure that faith-based organizations, churches, were included in that. It's now out of money. Are we close to seeing a deal reached to where more funds will go into this program?
We are close, I believe. This has been something that's been frustrating because we overwhelmingly passed the Paycheck Protection Program for faith-based nonprofits, and businesses that are small businesses across the country to be able to have 8 weeks of support, to, as you mentioned before, to keep people off the unemployment rolls, because our unemployment system is not sophisticated enough to be able to handle millions and millions of people all coming into it. And the best thing that we can do is help people stay connected to their current jobs rather than end up on unemployment and to go through that system. A week and a half ago, now almost 2 weeks ago, Republicans tried to be able to straight extend that. We were denied, and then again on the next week twice. That was last week. We were denied both times when we brought it up. Tried to bring it up again today. We were once again denied. The main goal that we have is we should allow small businesses to continue to thrive even during this time period and keep people employed. Yeah. Hopefully it's tomorrow.
All right, Senator James Lankford, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be watching tomorrow again.